I have a history background, so you can look at basically any generation. They love to do this. They love to criticize the generation coming up under them. And how dare they not get a job when they're 12 years old and get married when they're 13 and work a full life? Like, how dare they not work 70 hours a week? Like, they're so lazy. And that's a human thing. We look back with rose-colored glasses, or as C.S. Lewis would say, a bit of chronological snobbery.
What is up, folks? Welcome to the HiTech podcast. It's another week, another HiTech hijinks, and we got a special episode for you because if you're watching the video, you already know that the doctor is in. Justin Harbin is here to tell Will and I what we got wrong in a past episode, and it's gonna be great. I'm so excited.
So but before we get on him.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to set him up well. Before we get to that, though, Justin, chill out. We got an intro that we have to do. This is a podcast, just a reminder, as you're listening, before we jump into stuff, make sure to check us out. Subscribe, all socials, at HiTech Podcast or at HiTech Pod. I know there's two of them. It's annoying. We talk about this every time. Suck it up, folks. Find it, like, subscribe, hit the bell. I don't know. I'm in a vibe tonight. Okay? You can email us at inbox@hitechpod.us, and by what I mean by that is email Will. He'll talk to you. I promise I'm nice. Will does it. And then you can check us out on our website, hitechpod.us. Okay, that's enough of that stuff. So a little bit of setup here before I let Justin introduce himself again. But if you've been HiTech podcast fans for a while, you know the Dr. Justin Harbin, and joining us. But we did an episode a little while ago on is tech destroying kids? And Will and I had some really, really hot takes about some stuff. And Justin has maybe more educated hot takes than Will and I do. So he was happy to jump on and do a follow-up episode. So Justin, welcome, man. I know I see you every single day, but it is great to see you on the HiTech podcast. How you doing?
Oh, it's so great to be back. Yeah. Eager to chat EdTech with you all. It's definitely not a hot button right now. Definitely not something that is causing the booing of college presidents at commencements or anything like that. So really excited to...
Well, not EdTech in general. It's just AI.
True, yeah.
Is
guys.
Yeah, well, if you not know
this,
yeah, you've been missing this. People have been getting booed. Will is not exactly aware of all the news on this stuff. I usually have to update Will about these things. So yeah, so real quick, let's break this down, listeners. If you don't know about this, there's a couple places Justin can add some context to. I believe there was was it a president or just a speaker who claimed that AI is the new industrial revolution, and Gen Z at the graduation booed them off the not off the stage. They didn't leave the stage, but booed them, which I thought was funny. And then Justin was the one who told me about this one, that there was an institution that used AI to read their graduates' names, and it screwed them up
big time. Yeah, there was a large proportion of people that their name either got screwed up or didn't get read at all, I guess. It's one of the most cringeworthy videos I've seen in a long time, as this poor, I don't know if it's a president or something, tries to make it feel better. At least you got a picture of yourself up here. Not a great look. Not a great look.
Oh my gosh.
I find it funnier because it's Justin and I were talking about this, and this is great. We're putting this to recording. It's Justin and I were talking about this. Will, you and I have done a ton of AI audio reading, and you and I know that, while yes, it can fail, if you have a good breakdown of the name, it can read it. So for it to mess up that many names, somebody really phoned that in. They were like, oh yeah, what if we just drop the names into the AI tool? It'll totally nail them.
Instead of human in the loop, they went for human completely out of the loop. That was the only way you could get that.
There was no loop. It was just robot. There's no loop.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
Oh, anyway. So yeah, Justin, this is not a hot button topic. Nobody really cares about it. Everybody's pretty much in agreement about technology in the future. It's nobody's ever going to use it for bad things. So I don't know why anybody's worked up about it.
Did you get your barcodes yet? Did you your implants?
Mine's in the back of my neck. Yeah.
Oh, okay. For the Matrix plug-in.
No, I got my robot cockroach from China. It's great. That's a different thing. Well, don't worry, it's just for earthquakes.
This episode is not going to get to the topic with all of these potential
already started.
spin-offs.
So many things. Anyway, so a breakdown real quick, right? Before we jump into this, if you've not listened to the episode that came before this, episode 244, a couple episodes ago, Will and I did an episode called Is Tech Damaging Our Kids? And we broke down basically a testimony from Dr. Horvath. We're pretty confident that's how you pronounce it, though if we're not, doctor, and you somehow find this podcast, you can tell us, inbox at hitechpod.us. But basically his Senate committee testimony where he argues that Gen Z is the first generation to be less cognitively capable than their parents. And he basically lays all of the problems at the feet of EdTech. Now, Will and I clearly did not have strong opinions about this. That's not true. It was quite a strong episode. I got to be honest. We read it very carefully, sort of, and then we also had AI break it down a bit for us, and then Will and I just kind of like let loose. And if you listen to the extended episode, like we really let loose. It was a vibe. But we promised that we'd come back and do a bit more of a researched take on it. And I know Justin and I have actually had a lot of good conversation about this at work, because Justin, you dove much deeper into this on the research side, and obviously your background in education and stuff feeds into this a bit. So we wanted to bring you back on to kind of talk about your view on the testimony, what you think you align on, what you feel like is missing, and then as we're calling it, the Harbin hot take, which is basically what did Will and Josh miss in the last episode? We know you have notes. So with that, I'll just hand it over to you, right? So if you haven't listened to episode 244, though, please go listen to that. That'll give you context. We're not going to rehash the entire testimony here because Will and I already did a wonderfully full episode on it. And if you want to hear more about it, make sure to go join the HiTech Club and become a member, and you can check out the extended episode. But with that said, Justin, give us your take, man. Horvath testimony, where do you align? What do you feel like is missing? Kind of just give us your breakdown of how you feel about it.
Yeah, and I'll just give another recommendation. That's a top tier episode, top level banter, hot takes. It was just good stuff.
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a helpful.
You'll get your payment later. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, just slide. My index is open there. So yeah, I teach teacher candidates, undergraduate students, and we talk about EdTech a fair amount. And so this was actually something we brought up in class, and we wrestled through together. So for me, the biggest takeaway was that this was a brief testimony. And it doesn't. There's a lot of really great snippets and reels that they're hitting social media, at least in my algorithm, which probably isn't too surprising. But I think one of the takeaways is if you're testifying before Senate, you only have this much time. And honestly, who is that? Who is that audience? Like, you're the expert, and you're trying to explain to people like they're 5. Hopefully they're listening.
Well, it's because they kind of basically are. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna go there, but yeah. So I think there's one of my takeaways was he tried to hit a whole bunch of wave tops in a very short amount of time, and so yeah. So some of it's gonna get compressed, some of it's gonna lack some nuance. But for me, one of the really helpful takeaways that I resonated with and have for a long time, because this is honestly beyond the EdTech conversation, just looking at general pedagogy or curriculum or teaching methods in the classroom or activities. Education has an outsized influence on society, on lifelong quality of life outcomes. This is something that's really well established. And so the burden of proof for anything new that comes along ought to be very high. Not to defend, again, anything traditional as like the gold standard, because we know it's up and down. But the bar is so high. And what I really appreciate that he kind of does raise is that we've spent so much money in an environment where teachers' salaries have not risen commensurate with inflation and things like this. We've just spent millions and millions and millions without ever kind of asking the question, but is it really better? Like, it's cool, it's flashy, we've got iPads, like all the excitement, kids need to learn how to use these and all this sort of thing. And so the idea of the burden of proof being on these new, whether it's an iPad, whether it's a specific tool, like show me this works. And I think that is a fair ask. And again, I would levy the same critique of traditional paper and pencil practices that were not examined carefully, because it is such a high impact teaching is such a high impact vocation. We're working with minors. like we really need to have be able to justify everything we do in a classroom. And so for me, that's why I resonate with it. It's like, oh yeah, I've been saying that for a long time. And so some of this gets at, for me, implementation and failure of actually really implementing any of these things well. One-to-one being a great, piece, but like just basic technology use and just asking everyone like in a very short amount of time often to immediately adopt and expect it to go well. That's just poor leadership. That's poor stewardship of your resources. Yeah, so I think there's implementation, and there's also some of the tools themselves are actually ineffective. But the way they're designed themselves is not designed for learning. We can dig into that later, but yeah. So I also want to recognize, you guys rightfully called out, there are a lot of people who are pendulum swinging right now, and that's really fair. Like the booze at the those videos are just something else. But there's a lot of that, right? And there's a lot of like we've talked about this before. I love a lot of like I require physical note taking in my classes. I don't do that because I'm against laptops. We actually use them intentionally in class frequently enough. I do it because my students and all humans are easily distracted. So I'm not like against technology. I use it often. 100%. And my students, and again, anecdotal, but for years now I've been like, wow, thank you. I don't know how not to be addicted. Like, thank you for freeing me up to do that. And so yeah, I think there are people who are saying, they'll cite studies like, especially like handwriting versus typing. Come on, like that is there. You can find studies on either side. There's not a convincing, compelling on, So I still enjoy using technology, but
I like to shred that one. Yeah, I knew, because there's a lot of we brought it up in the episode. That study has a lot of issues, like you said. You can find on either side. Now, I am fully in support of, like, Justin, you and I have talked a lot about this, whether it's been lunch conversations or just side conversations about this. Your argument of it being a distraction point is completely valid, right? Like, you and I talked about this to a group of other educators in higher ed, and that was like, if you have a real logical reason behind this and intentionality behind the way you're using it, I'm fully behind whether you switch or you don't, right? And I understand I have my own bias and leanings, because, like, as a student, I did have a system for myself for digital notes that I used, and I got annoyed when somebody was like, please go do this handwriting note thing. And I was like, I don't know if you know this, but I signed a lot of things as an obnoxious drummer for a band, and because of that, my handwriting is straight horrible.
And worse than a doctor's.
Yes, like I literally just handwrote something today in a meeting, and I had to relook at it and see if I could read it again. Like that's problematic. Okay. And it's a mixture. It's a mixture.
Amazing.
It's a mixture of things. It's from the signing stuff, but it's also from, like, I have some carpal tunnel stuff from being a drummer for 20 odd years. So, like, for me, typing is just an easier system, and I have, as Justin knows, a system for retaining all of that stuff. So
but this is one of those things that I like we bring up, because we are talking about this, like, congressional approach. It's national news. It's a legal issue, right? Like, that's why it's becoming a focus point. But before we even get to that level, we already know that there's so many layers to this issue that don't have to rise to whether or not, like, Justin's mentioned money and salaries. You've mentioned, the addiction cycles and the visibility of tech in the classroom. You've mentioned the distractibility. You've mentioned physical ability, right? So we've allowed tech for some times, and we always would allow tech if it's an accessibility tool. But there's so many variables on this issue, and yet this one thing gets in front of the news, and we have all this time to talk about it and try and figure out how we make sense of it. At the same, but, like, it's not new. The problem isn't new. It's just this moment in time wrestling with these things that is novel, because the tech is so prevalent. And we were talking about this last week on our episode, or recently on our episode, about, like, age verification. One of the big things that's happening with this moment is people are pushing to change something legally, but never maybe pushing accountability to the people causing the problem, the tech companies, right? Like, when you said, Justin, the salaries thing, that grinds my gears, because it's like, yeah, you can't barely pay a teacher $60,000 a year, but you'll sign a $5 million annual contract for some ed tech tool that has no proof that it can do what it's saying it can do. Like, this is a sticky wicket, and I don't like it.
It is, and I think it's fair to recognize too, education is still an emerging field. like professional education, we've only been around, what, 100 years? It really in a systematized way, and it's even more recent than that we've really. So it's still growing. I think I'm really encouraged, honestly, by a lot of the things I'm seeing over in the UK and some of the attention cognitive science is getting there. Again, you can swing a pendulum a bit, I think, too far, but I'm really encouraged by some of the things I'm seeing. But yeah, I think overall, you can take his testimony many ways, right? For me, it didn't come across to me as some people will do, as saying, kids these days, look at them, look at these Gen Z, these Gen Alpha. I knew it. They're dumber than us. I actually didn't take that. You might want to clip that.
Yeah.
But
I gotta think it would be funnier though if it was that way. Going in front of like a congressional thing and be like, look at these kids. They're
these
stupid.
idiots.
But the longitudinal study is kind of this key linchpin of his argument. And we can, you could go back and forth on the standards of what was statistically significant as far as impactful or not that he used. And even say when you look at the TIMSS or PISA tests, again, international tests, I am super leery of. I think, Josh, you talked about this in the episode previously. Again, education is so radically different from country to country, how each country imagines what education is for, the resourcing, there's so many historical and like societal things that come to play. But the baseline of your own information year on year is not useless. And so that we can still kind of redeem some sort of use out of those things, as annoying as it can be, and as much as we really need to reduce some of this high stakes testing that we've been so engaged in for so many years in the States. So yeah, for me, it's like, okay, show me observably, measurably that your specific EdTech tool improves learning. I don't think that's too hard to ask. Like, before I spend a penny, show me the research. And so I think and a lot of it ties into much larger work done by really well-respected researchers looking at kind of broader trends. Again, knowing there are so many factors building to building, let alone districts. It is so crazy different from region to region. And again, it's just how education has changed over the years. What I think is really interesting is there is a stark change around 2010. And again, having been in the classroom and in teacher education during this whole time, we weren't really changing our methods at that point. The one factor you can kind of point to that did change was the move to one-to-one. It's the biggest thing that you could point to. So there is some level of certainty to say, yeah, the other factors we're pretty confident didn't change. Obviously, you get later on, you get into COVID, you get into societal upheaval, you get into all sorts of stuff. It's way more complex now.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's been a great journey, very peaceful since then. Like 2010 hit, and then it's been on an upswing since then. Yeah, it's only been better.
You raise a good point, Justin. Something I haven't necessarily brought into my own philosophy in recent years, of like the youth of this situation, like modern education in the States, being a young, you kind of just assume, universities have been around for so long, but even the universities did not follow standards for centuries, right? Like some of the universities that are very old in this world just did their own thing, and it's standardization and if you will, competition across the universities is novel in the history of humankind. So then you take into account, if we're just going to look at 100 years, 150 years, and the last 30 years, 40 years have been rife with problems, whether it's the changes in policy, it's the introduction of technology, it's the COVID education. Like, we have some really significant speed bumps in longitudinal assessment, evaluation of what we've been doing. So it really, you're starting to like really kind of click in with me, and I hate this. I don't want you to win me so early in this episode. Not to say that I don't already, because I think we do align in many ways, but like one of the things that's really painful for me about this process is, having loved tech so much and been what I would consider myself a technologist, I do hate it. There's a really big part of me that just gets so frustrated with how it's postured, how it's used, how it's designed. And if we could make things that are set up first and foremost to help and to improve, that's great. And I think a lot of tools even go back to our Schoology days, guys. The whole thing that those guys did to make Schoology was a college project to solve the problem of Blackboard. They felt like Blackboard was so horrible to use.
Sorry. That's my favorite origin story, is that like we hated Blackboard so much, we created another LMS. Like it's just it's a great origin story.
Was only so much more better than the other. But
because it's Facebook, but it's fine.
Nonetheless, right?
Sorry.
There was if we can keep it that simple, there was a very altruistic goal. And yet it still became a mega company, and it got sold. They got bought into a mega company called Power School, and just got chopped on the chopping block with everything else that said tech. I think about Nearpod. I loved Nearpod when it launched. Now I'm actually thinking through the reasons I might not like Nearpod today, but it had a novel and intended improvement. Then it gets bought by a VC, and that VC Renaissance takes it into its fold and makes it operate certain ways and meet certain quotas and designs it to serve the bottom dollar instead of the lowest common denominator of student, right? And so it's definitely some of these things that we can't ignore at this point in time, that tech has stopped, or that tech has such a stronger correlation towards self-service and financial service over the learner's service and the learner's development. And so, actually, this is good. Let's put the spotlight on this thing. I think tech's good. I want tech to be used well in the classroom, but I think we do need to stop. We need to check ourselves, look in the mirror before we keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that we need to stop necessarily. No, I'm just joking. But I agree with Justin. I will say the thing I think that's convincing, as you and I have talked more about this, and even what you were sharing, right, is I think the money side of it is a huge part of this for me as well, which is that like there's a lot of money invested towards other things other than learning, right? And we've all seen this. I mean, we'll give an example off the top of his head: Schoology, Nearpod, and I could list off more and more, right? Like all you have to do is probably go back in the archives of the HiTech podcast and play a game of did they get bought out or not?
Or do they still exist?
Or do they still exist? Well, I mean, like look at the AI space. Is this exact thing, right? Like Will and I went to EdTech conferences, and for every tool that was just like, hey, look, it's basically GPT with some like learning on top of it, right? And like we packaged it, and everybody was just like digging deep into it, right? And I think there's some cool stuff that came out of that. But to your point, Justin, it's like where are we holding the burden of proof to say, okay, if we're going to start using this in education, like your point is valid. We need to be able to point to how this is actually impacting learning. Now, Justin, I'm curious on your take, because there is one side of this, right, that I still always struggle with, and it's probably my own biasy towards this situation, right? Because I literally just heard it the other day, right? I was at a family event, and I walked by my dad and my uncle, and they're doing the classic, like two men above the age of 50 stand next to each other, and one of two things is going to happen. Okay, they're going to talk about smoking meat, or they're going to start talking about how Gen Z is ruining the world. Okay, and Gen Z is just like the newest sacrificial lamb. The millennials were the sacrificial lamb at one point too, right? So like one thing I struggle with, I killed Will. One thing I struggle with in the midst of this is like I understand you only have so much to communicate in this congressional hearing, right? But I think the thing that probably set me off from the start is this broad statement of like, this generation is the first generation to be less capable than their past generation. So like, I know the research of how he compared different teaching methods, but maybe you could give some more clarity to the listener of like not necessarily where Horvath is pulling that from, but I know you've been doing a lot of digging into this and seeing where it's coming from. Where have you seen the research pointing towards this for like actual data to look at? So, because to your point, they're not trying to be I agree. I don't think they're trying to be like my dad and uncle at a barbecue, this darn younger generation. They are genuinely trying to identifying some problems that have existed in generation that's kind of 2010 and after come through education, and what that looks like.
Yeah. Again, I have a history background, so you can look at basically any generation. They love to do this. They love to criticize the generation coming up under them, especially when you hit like the 1940s and 50s, and like the teenager becomes like a social group, that we didn't necessarily have before. And how dare they not get a job when they're 12 years old and like get married when they're 13 and like work a full life, like how dare they not work 70 hours a week? Like they're so lazy. And so like that's a human thing. We look back with rose-colored glasses, or as C.S. Lewis would say, a bit of chronological snobbery. And there's definitely an issue with that. One of the things I appreciate is he is drawing on the kind of standard markers of learning that we've been tracking for a very long period of time. And so like there are absolutely measurable declines across basically all of the fronts. And I think that's reasonable given there's not just EdTech, there's COVID. Like all sorts of, the world is less stable than it was a year ago, let alone 10 years ago. And so I think those are factors, right? And I would say too, just anecdotally, you talk to any teacher who's been in the classroom prior to, let's say, just use 2010, they'll tell you it's a different animal altogether. Like it is so, behavioral challenges are different. There's just all sorts of like cultural pieces that are economic pieces that are all pushing and pulling and acting. Changes in administration, different like emphases as pendulums swing to be away from teacher power towards administrative power, as it does every so many years, kind of goes back and forth, right? So I think that's a big piece. Yeah, but from what from my reading of the literature that's out there, and I try to again stay on top of this, we are in decline in many measures, and I think it's also kind of a wicked problem. There are so many complex issues that a simple solution could often make things worse. It's going to be a long term. It's going to be a grind. And we're doing so in the midst of a demographic shift that is so significant. I think we're going to see schools. Well, we are already seeing like elementary schools close down building by building all over. It's kind of quietly happening, but people are having less kids. And so like we're doing it so in midst of a massive shift in many different areas of this. But generally the trends are, yeah, we can track this and it's not great. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. Yeah.
Hey folks, we know you were in the middle of just the best episode of the HiTech podcast ever, but if you like this episode and everything we're producing, make sure to join the HiTech Club. It's a low monthly cost. We're not going to tell you what it is at the moment because who knows, it could change, but it's a low cost and everything you give to the podcast helps us produce it, whether it's subscription costs or hardware, things that help us make this happen. So you want to be a participant, head over to hitechpod.us. You can get quick and easy access links to our subscription model and join the club, which gives you tons of fun benefits like no more of these ads. Very simple. More of our faces.
Yeah.
Uncut Josh, right? You're going to get all the crazy things he says all the time.
Yeah. You guys should, like the last 5 years, folks, I've been saying a lot of stuff you haven't heard. So if you want to hear it, become a club member and you can hear that. That seems like a win to me. And if you want to dictate what we talk about on the podcast, you can do that as a HiTech Club member.
You'll be able to vote.
You'll be able to vote on topic ideas. So, yeah, make sure to become a club member. I think that'd be super cool.
We'd really appreciate that.
Okay. We're gonna hold you hostage here for a while until you do. No, I'm just joking. On to our regular scheduled conversation, whatever the heck we were talking about. I'm sure it was great.
It was great.
Yeah.
Back to it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think what we really landed on is that it is just as complicated as we thought it was. I think to Justin's point here, to be fair to Horvath, he only had so much time to really break this down, and he does focus on real problems that I don't think can just be dismissed away as like a curmudgeon unhappy about the new generation, right? Especially because it's not at a barbecue in the backyard. So like I think we do have to take this seriously, and I think we do have to focus on the learning and the people, and tech comes second to that. And like, and I like the tech, and I think it should still be involved. But I do think we need to refocus and start rewarding the people who are focusing on the learning and the people and investing more energy into that space than some of the other spaces. And I think that's a real, at least a path forward that we could take and would help us in the age of what's happening with AI. And I think that's definitely worth our area. Now, that to say, as we get close to an end, Justin, we do want to still, reassure the listeners that you're not completely against technology. So we did joke we were going to ask you, Justin, what tech are you still using? Not that you've gotten rid. Let's be fair to Justin. He has not just gotten rid of tech. Okay. Not totally. He's being more careful for sure. But I know there's still like different tech stuff you're planning on using, and I think the reason it's good to ask this question, it's not just because it's funny to ask what tech you're using after we've spent a lot of time talking about tech and its issues, but also because I think it highlights, Justin, as somebody who you're being critical about this, it highlights where you are trying to be intentional, and maybe can set an example for those of you listening. Okay, what does it look like to be intentional with tech? Like, and how do we do that? And so I know you've been thinking through some different ways of how you're using tech, or you're going to be using tech, that I think is done in an intentional way beyond just using PowerPoint. Because listeners, we did joke beforehand, using PowerPoint doesn't count anymore. I'm sorry. So basically, yeah, what are you using or going to be using that you're excited about and that you think can be a useful tool in what you're doing?
Yeah, so I would say general principles for me are seeking slowness and more purposeful use. And again, that's tough because we live in such an economically driven age. It's deep down into our imaginations. We have people who are content creators, not storytellers, not whatever. It's like, no, I produce things to be sold because you will consume it. It's so crassly late stage capitalism. And it's like, it's into our psyches. It's deep. And so what does it mean to move slowly, to move humanly? And so for me, I have gone to like physical note taking with like a lot of scaffolding. Like, here's how you do that, by the way, because maybe you don't know how. Because all humans need to learn how to learn, and we need to kind of break that down for students. And then also, what is it? And for me, it's been about limiting distractions, because I just noticed my students really struggled. And so for me, the things I still love, and so in the area of not new technology, but things I found myself continually going back to, continually singing their praises, are opportunities for what we call total participation techniques. So every single student responds, and then there's like a discussion, there's a follow-up. So for me, the one I still love is Plickers. You get those cards that look like little Rorschach tests, and again, what
I think you will die with those cards, Justin. I'm just gonna be honest. I think you will be.
They're laminated.
I'm burying them.
Yeah.
I'm burying them with.
I'm okay with that. And so for me, what I love about that is, the tool is pretty easy to set up. There's not my student's like, I can't log in. I don't have to deal with that. The apps, the text on my side, not the student, but it's the conversations it sets up. And so it allows me to quickly, and in a way I could not do otherwise, understand where everyone is at a moment's glance. Literally scanning through the camera on my phone, I see little red dots or green dots, and where the money's at is really, now why would somebody say that? Why might this be confusing for somebody? And really diving into the kind of metacognitive side of things. And so I still love anything like that that's going to set me up for helping them make their thinking visible to me, so we can run with it, we can play with it, I can model, think aloud, like, well, here's what I would think as I went through that, here's what I would struggle with. And so leaning into humanity, but the tech created an opportunity for us to do that I did not have otherwise. That if I was in a tech-less classroom, I couldn't really do, honestly, unless we figured out some other way for them to hold up, like, I don't know, whiteboards, but then they would see each other's answers, and there's like I love little mini whiteboards, they're great. But so that's one side. And another good example that, again, for me, a lot of it's just setting up really rich conversations. So the one I'm currently really excited about is setting up simulations using artificial intelligence. And there are some great companies that do this, but particularly in teacher education, in a climate in 2026 where teachers are being asked to be like experts in like 30 different fields. Like, you got to be a psychologist and you actually got to know the thing you're going to teach, and you got to know tech, and you got to basically kind of be a parent. And you also have to be able to assess physical threats. And I mean, there's like 1,000 different things that are being asked of teachers that were not asked before, frankly, for many generations. And so you need to experience that. And for me, good learning, into like Lev and Wenger and some of their work on situated cognition, you've got to give them opportunities to think in an authentic environment as possible. And so ideally, they're in the field. They're observing in a public school nearby. We're doing something like that. I can't always do that. So having AI create scenarios where they have to respond and like put their heads there, like, wow, what would you do? Especially when you have a good scenario that's real and challenging, and where none of the answers are good or the textbook answers, because that's how real life works. And then you follow up and you're like, wow, you're just wrestling through this, because that's what real life is like. There are not clean-cut answers. And so I'm actually really excited about that. I'll have to report back later on how it goes, but because it's early stages, but I'm really excited about that. And again, for me, I think a lot of it is setting up the human interactions in ways like that would be harder for me to do before.
Even in the techie things he does do, there's so much philosophy and intentionality in doing it. Always respected you, my friend. This conversation today hasn't changed that, and there's been some tongue in cheek while we did the last episode, even today, of like a little villainous nature, but like I think more of us agree than disagree on the fact of what we're trying to accomplish in the classroom. And so while Josh and I may be more technologist in heart and soul, I think we all agree at a pedagogical level what you're trying to accomplish and what you're demonstrating with those tools. So that's really awesome.
Speak for yourself. I hate a human focus. I'm more of a money first.
Show me your barcode.
Apps
Where's your barcode?
Yep,
I want to make sure you got it plugged in, so you can,
No, I'm joking. That's totally true. We've a little. Justin and I've had a lot of back and forth about this over lunch conversations and stuff. And at the end of the day, I mean, I truly respect you, my friend, about this. And I think all three of us, while we land in slightly different places on different details about things, we all agree with the same thing: human focus first, learning focus first. And technology should be used to support that. And I think whatever that looks like in the scenarios you're in, and there should be a strong burden of proof. That these are all things we should be able to support. Much like in past episodes where I've said we should all be able to agree we don't want murder robots. I think we should all agree human focus, learning focus, and burden of proof are all important things when it comes to technology related in education.
No murder robots. Roger that.
No murder robots. Gosh, I don't know how many times I have to say that on this podcast.
Justin, thanks as always. Thanks for joining us, my friend. We'll have you back never soon enough, right? We'll have you back for something else. We'll wait for the next congressional hearing to drop or whatever does come out. But thanks for joining us this evening.
Yeah, always enjoy. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Well, folks, we're going to wrap up. You know the social medias and all the things to follow. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the HiTech Podcast. And until next week's episode, we will continue empowering minds.
Embracing tech. Sort of.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Buckle up.